The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love. These words belong to Meister Eckhart, a 13th century Christian mystic who understood something that most of us spend our entire lives missing, that the instrument through which we perceive reality is not separate from reality itself. It is reality. And what you are about to discover is that this isn't mystical poetry, it's the most practical truth you'll ever encounter. Most people live their entire lives believing they are experiencing an objective world. They wake up, they see problems, they encounter difficulties, they meet people who frustrate them, and they face circumstances that limit them, and they spend their energy trying to change these things. They try to fix their relationships, improve their circumstances, control their environment, and manage other people's behavior. They exhaust themselves in this endless attempt to rearrange the furniture of their lives, never realizing that the problem isn't the furniture, the problem is the room itself. Or rather, the problem is that they don't realize they built the room. Here's what I mean. Right now, as you listen to my words, you believe you are observing reality. You believe there is a world out there and a you in here, and that your job is to navigate between the two. But what if that's backwards? What if the world you're experiencing isn't something you're observing, but something you're generating? What if your awareness isn't a passive receiver of information, but an active constructor of experience? This sounds like philosophy. It sounds abstract, but it's the most concrete thing in your life. Because right now, in this moment, everything you experience, every thought, every emotion, every sensation, every perception is appearing in your awareness, not outside of it, in it. Your awareness is the space in which your entire reality unfolds. And here's the truly unsettling part. You can't actually prove that anything exists outside of that awareness. You can believe it does. You can assume it does. But you can't prove it, because the only evidence you have for an external world is your experience of that world, and that experience is happening in your awareness. The philosopher George Berkeley understood this in the 18th century, when he argued that to exist is to be perceived. His famous formula was, esse est percipi, to be is to be perceived. He wasn't saying that reality doesn't exist. He was saying that reality and perception are not two separate things. They are one thing, seen from different angles. And if that's true, then what you call your life is not something happening to you, it's something happening as you. It's not that awareness is experiencing reality. Awareness is reality experiencing itself. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is starting to sound dangerously close to solipsism, the idea that only your mind exists and everything else is an illusion. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying the world isn't real. I'm saying that the world as you experience it is inseparable from the quality of your awareness. And because most people have never examined their own awareness, have never actually looked at the instrument through which they're looking, they don't realize that they're living in a reflection of their own consciousness. Let me give you an example. Two people can walk down the same street, and one sees opportunity everywhere, while the other sees threat. Same street, same buildings, same people, completely different worlds. Why? Because they're not seeing the street. They're seeing their interpretation of the street, filtered through their beliefs, their past experiences, their emotional states, and their unconscious assumptions. They're seeing a reflection of their own awareness projected onto neutral stimuli. Or consider this. You've probably had the experience of being in a terrible mood, and then someone says something perfectly innocent, and you take it as an insult. Later, when you've calmed down, you realize they weren't being insulting at all. So what changed? The words didn't change, the other person didn't change, your interpretation changed. Which means you weren't responding to what they said, you were responding to your own mental and emotional state, reflected back to you through their words. This is what's happening all the time, with everything, and most people never notice it. They think they're responding to reality, when actually they're responding to their own consciousness masquerading as reality. The mystics have known this for thousands of years. The Upanishads say, as is your desire, so is your intention. As is your intention, so is your will. As is your will, so is your deed. As is your deed, so is your destiny. In other words, the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. What you are aware of, and how you are aware of it, determines what manifests in your experience. But here's where it gets interesting. If your awareness is the variable, if your consciousness is the determining factor in what you experience, then you have far more power than you think you do. Not power over external circumstances necessarily, but power over the reality you inhabit. Because if you change your awareness, you change your world. Not metaphorically, literally. Think about someone who overcomes a phobia. Let's say someone is terrified of public speaking. For years, the thought of standing in front of a crowd has filled them with dread. Then they work through it, they shift something in their consciousness, and suddenly, the same activity that used to terrify them becomes manageable, maybe even enjoyable. Did the activity change? No. Did other people's faces change? No. What changed was their awareness. And when their awareness changed, their entire experienced reality changed with it. Or, consider someone recovering from depression. Depression isn't just sadness. It's a fundamental alteration in how you perceive reality. Colors seem dull. Food has no taste. Activities that used to bring joy feel meaningless. It's as if you're living in a completely different world from the one healthy people inhabit. And in a very real sense, you are. Because depression isn't just a mood. It's a state of awareness that generates a particular quality of reality. When someone recovers from depression, they often say things like, "It's like I was living in a fog, and now I can see clearly again." The world didn't change, their awareness changed. And with it, their entire reality transformed. Now, the reason most people don't realize that awareness is the variable is because awareness is the one thing we never examine. We use it to examine everything else. We use our awareness to look at our thoughts, our emotions, our circumstances, other people, and the world. But we almost never turn awareness back on itself. We almost never examine the instrument we're using to do all this examining, and because we don't examine it, we don't realize how much it's shaping what we see. It's like wearing tinted glasses and forgetting you have them on. If you're wearing rose-tinted glasses, everything looks rosy. If you're wearing gray-tinted glasses, everything looks gray. But if you've been wearing these glasses your entire life, you don't realize the tint is coming from the glasses. You think that's just how the world looks. You think the rosiness or the grayness is a property of the world itself, not a property of your perception. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become." He wasn't talking about positive thinking. He was talking about the fundamental truth that your state of consciousness determines your experienced reality. You are not in the world is in you. Your awareness is the container in which everything appears. And once you understand this, once you really see it, everything changes. Because you realize that the problems you've been trying to solve aren't actually the problems. The problem isn't your difficult boss. The problem is your awareness of your difficult boss. The problem isn't your lack of money. The problem is your awareness of lack. The problem isn't that you're not enough. The problem is your awareness of yourself as not enough. This doesn't mean you do nothing about external circumstances. It means you stop believing that changing external circumstances will solve your problems, because it won't. If you're unhappy because you don't have enough money, getting more money won't make you happy. It will just reveal the next layer of unhappiness that was hidden beneath the money problem. You'll find something else to be unhappy about, because the unhappiness isn't coming from the lack of money. It's coming from a state of awareness that generates the experience of lack. And that state of awareness will simply attach itself to whatever is available. This is why winning the lottery doesn't make people happy. Studies have shown that lottery winners, after an initial spike of happiness, return to roughly the same level of life satisfaction they had before winning. Some even become more miserable. Because they didn't win a change in circumstances. They won a pile of money that they then experienced through the same quality of awareness they had before. And if that awareness was fundamentally dissatisfied, fundamentally anxious, and fundamentally lacking, then no amount of money will change that. The same is true for relationships. People think, if I just find the right person, I'll be happy. So they search for the right person, and sometimes they find someone who seems perfect. And for a while, they are happy. But then gradually, the same problems they had in previous relationships start appearing in this one. Because the problem was never the other person. The problem was their awareness. If you're bringing an awareness of neediness into a relationship, you'll experience the other person through the lens of neediness, and you'll unconsciously create dynamics that confirm your neediness. If you're bringing an awareness of unworthiness, you'll experience the other person through that lens, and you'll sabotage the relationship to confirm your unworthiness. This is what people mean when they talk about inner work. They don't mean sitting around thinking about yourself all day. They mean examining and transforming the quality of your awareness, because that quality determines the quality of everything you experience. And this is hard. It's hard because your awareness feels invisible to you. It feels like nothing. It feels like just the neutral background in which everything else appears. But it's not neutral. It's not nothing. It's everything. Your awareness has a texture. It has a flavor. It has qualities. And those qualities determine what you're capable of perceiving. If your awareness is contracted, fearful, and defensive, then you will perceive threat everywhere. You will interpret neutral events as dangerous. You will see enemies where there are none. Not because the world is full of threats and enemies, but because your awareness is generating an experience of threat and enmity. You are living in a world reflected back from a state of contraction. On the other hand, if your awareness is open, curious, and relaxed, then you will perceive possibility everywhere. You will interpret challenges as opportunities. You will see potential where others see obstacles. Same world, different awareness, different reflection, different reality. And here's the truly radical part. You can change your awareness, not through positive thinking or affirmations or visualizations, though those might help, but through something much more direct, by becoming aware of awareness itself, by noticing the space in which all your experiences are appearing, by recognizing that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, and not your circumstances. You are the awareness in which all of those things appear. This is what meditation is actually about, not relaxation, not stress relief, though those can be side effects. Meditation is about recognizing the nature of awareness itself. It's about seeing that you are not the contents of your consciousness, but the space in which those contents appear. And when you see that, when you really see that, something extraordinary happens. You stop being so identified with your thoughts and emotions and circumstances. You stop taking them so personally. You stop believing they define you. And when you stop believing they define you, they lose their power over you. A thought is just a thought. An emotion is just an emotion. A circumstance is just a circumstance. They're all temporary appearances in awareness, no more substantial than clouds passing through the sky. The sky doesn't become the clouds. The sky remains the sky, vast and unchanging, while the clouds come and go. Your awareness is like that sky. Thoughts and emotions and circumstances come and go, but awareness remains. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but even if I change my awareness, the world is still the world. My bills are still my bills. My problems are still my problems. And yes, in one sense that's true. If you have a brain tumor, recognizing the nature of awareness won't make the tumor disappear. If you're being evicted from your apartment, meditation won't pay your rent. But here's what will happen. Your relationship to those things will transform. And when your relationship to them transforms, your experience of them transforms. And when your experience transforms, your response transforms. And when your response transforms, the outcomes often transform too. Think about someone facing a terminal diagnosis. Two people get the same diagnosis. One person collapses into despair, becomes bitter, and spends their remaining time in misery, poisoning their relationships and their own remaining days. Another person faces the same diagnosis with equanimity, maybe even gratitude, and uses it as a catalyst to deepen their relationships, to appreciate each moment, and to live more fully than they ever have. Same diagnosis, same prognosis, completely different lives, Why? Because of the quality of their awareness. One is identified with the body, with the story of, "This shouldn't be happening to me," with resistance and fear. The other has somehow managed to recognize that they are not the body, not the story, and that awareness itself is untouched by illness and death. I'm not saying the second response is easy. I'm not saying anyone should feel bad if they can't muster that kind of equanimity. I'm saying that it's possible. And it's possible because awareness is the variable. Everything else is a reflection. This is why spiritual traditions across the world have always emphasized self-knowledge, not knowledge about the self, but knowledge as the self, recognition of what you are at the deepest level. Because once you know what you are, once you recognize yourself as awareness itself, rather than as the contents of awareness, you become unshakable. Not because nothing bad happens to you, but because you're no longer identified with the things that happen. You recognize them as temporary appearances in something vast and unchanging. The Stoic philosophers understood this. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. They weren't talking about controlling your thoughts or forcing yourself to think positively. They were talking about recognizing the fundamental distinction between awareness and the contents of awareness, between the sky and the clouds. And once you make that distinction, once you see it clearly, you realize that you've been suffering from a case of mistaken identity. You've been thinking you are your thoughts, your emotions, your body, your circumstances, your history, and your personality, but you're not. Those are all appearances in awareness. You are the awareness itself. You are the space in which all of that appears. Now, this might sound like an abstract philosophical point, but it has the most practical implications imaginable, because if you're identified with your thoughts, then negative thoughts feel like the truth. If you're identified with your emotions, then difficult emotions feel overwhelming. If you're identified with your circumstances, then bad circumstances feel like proof that your life is wrong. But if you recognize yourself as awareness, then thoughts are just thoughts, emotions are just emotions, circumstances are just circumstances. They're all weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your being. And when you're not so identified with the weather, you stop being controlled by it. You can feel sadness without believing you are sad. You can think fearful thoughts without believing you are afraid. You can face difficult circumstances without believing you are a victim, because you know what you are. You know that the real you, the aware you, the conscious you, is untouched by any of this. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Be in the world but not of it." He wasn't talking about physical separation. He was talking about a shift in identification. Recognize that you are not the wave, you are the ocean. The wave rises and falls, but the ocean remains. Your thoughts and emotions and circumstances rise and fall, but awareness remains. And here's the beautiful part. When you recognize yourself as awareness, when you stop being so identified with the contents of your consciousness, those contents naturally begin to change. Not because you're forcing them to change, but because you're no longer feeding them with your identification. Negative thoughts lose their power when you stop believing them. Difficult emotions pass more quickly when you stop resisting them. Challenging circumstances become more manageable when you stop seeing them as proof that something is wrong with you or your life. This is the great paradox. When you stop trying to change your experience changes. When you stop trying to fix yourself, you discover you were never broken. When you stop trying to improve your life improves. Not because you're doing nothing, but because you're acting from a completely different place. You're acting from awareness itself, rather than from the contracted, fearful, grasping part of the mind that thinks it's you. And when you act from awareness, your actions are naturally wise, naturally compassionate, and naturally effective. Not because you're trying to be wise, or compassionate, or effective, but because those qualities are inherent to awareness. Awareness is naturally open, naturally loving, and naturally intelligent. It's only when we're identified with the contents of awareness, with our thoughts and emotions and stories, that we become contracted and confused. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something. Maybe you were creating something, or playing music, or in deep conversation, or watching a sunset. In those moments, your sense of self temporarily disappeared. You weren't thinking about yourself. You weren't monitoring yourself. You weren't judging yourself. You were just aware, just present, just there. And in those moments, didn't everything feel somehow more real, more alive, and more vibrant? That's because you were experiencing reality directly, without the filter of self-consciousness, without the distortion of identification with thought. That's your natural state. That's what awareness feels like when it's not contracted around a sense of separate self. And you can access that state not by doing something special, but by recognizing what's already true, that you are awareness, not the contents of awareness, that you are the space, not the furniture, that you are the screen, not the movie. And when you recognize that, when you really see it, you realize something shocking. You've never actually been limited. You've never actually been lacking. You've never actually been inadequate. Those were all just thoughts appearing in awareness, and you mistook them for truth. You mistook them for what you are, but they're not what you are. They're just weather patterns moving through what you are. This is why all the great spiritual teachings point to the same recognition: know thyself. Not knowing about yourself, know yourself. Recognize what you actually are, underneath all the thoughts and emotions and stories and identifications. And what you actually are is awareness. Pure, open, unlimited awareness. Everything else is a reflection. So the question is, what kind of reflection are you creating? Because whether you realize it or not, you're creating it right now. Your awareness is generating your experience right now. The quality of your consciousness in this moment is determining the quality of your life in this moment, and it will continue to do so in the next moment, and the next, and the next, until you die. Unless you wake up, unless you recognize what's actually happening. And recognizing what's happening doesn't require you to become something you're not. It doesn't require years of meditation or spiritual practice, though those can help. It requires you to see what's already true. Right now, in this moment, everything you're experiencing is appearing in awareness. The words you're reading, the thoughts you're thinking about the words, the emotions those thoughts are generating, the sensations in your body, all of it is appearing in awareness. Awareness is the one constant. Everything else comes and goes. So who are you? Are you the thoughts that come and go? Are you the emotions that rise and fall? Are you the circumstances that change? Or are you the awareness in which all of that appears? The awareness that's been here your entire life, unchanging, watching it all? You are the awareness. You've always been the awareness. You've just been so identified with the contents of awareness that you forgot. You forgot what you are. You thought you were the wave, when actually you're the ocean. You thought you were the clouds, when actually you're the sky. You thought you were the movie, when actually you're the screen. And the moment you remember, the moment you recognize what you actually are, everything changes. Not because reality changes, but because your relationship to reality changes. And since your experience of reality is inseparable from your relationship to it, your reality changes. Your awareness is the variable. Everything else is a reflection. So look at your life right now. Look at your relationships, your circumstances, your problems, and your challenges. And ask yourself, what quality of awareness is generating this experience? Is your awareness contracted or open, fearful or curious, defensive or receptive, identified with thought or resting as awareness itself? And whatever you find, know that you can shift it, not by forcing it, not by positive thinking, not by pretending things are different than they are, but by recognizing what you actually are. By recognizing that you are not the contents of your consciousness, but the consciousness itself. By recognizing that awareness is the variable, and everything else is a reflection. When you see that, when you really see it, you're free. Not free from circumstances, not free from challenges, not free from suffering. But be free from the belief that circumstances and challenges and suffering define you. Free to experience whatever arises without losing yourself in it. Free to be fully human, while recognizing that your deepest nature is not human at all, but pure awareness, vast, open, unlimited awareness in which the entire universe appears. That's what you are. That's what you've always been. You just forgot. And now, perhaps, you remember. Your awareness is the variable. Everything else is a reflection. And once you see that, once you really see that, you realize you've been holding the key to your prison the entire time. You were never locked in. You just thought you were. And that thought was itself appearing in the infinite space of your awareness, mistaken for a wall when it was only ever a cloud passing through. The question now is, will you continue to mistake clouds for walls, or will you recognize yourself as the sky?